Shoot and scoot, poop doo doo, Scooby dee doo, Scooby dee 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 dee. Bop bop bop. Where was I? Sorry about that. But not even sorry. Like, that was Chill. Shout out to Chill. It was down in he's at Dixon Correctional Center. He was saying they just gave them they was just giving him masks. So he's been checking in with me from time to time. And then on top of that, my mom called. So shout out to Mama Fiasco. Mars, what up, bro? Ramadan Mubarak, what's up, Faji? So where was I? Yes, about the codes, right? These lists of codes. That's where we kind of left off. First, I want to go, before we get into the codes, I want to get into this point to finish with this Zamzam piece or any other kind of peripheral piece in a religion. When you put weight, even if that weight is trivial, because what's trivial to you may be very serious to other people. And when you start to build these complexes of religion that are trying to cover every single aspect of a person's life, whether it be something that is very mundane or it be something that is very, again, like a reinforcement, like getting somebody to wake up for Fajr by telling them that if they don't get up, that's the devil peeing in their ear or something like that. Like when you do little things like that, people start to build the religion on that stuff, right? And it can be it's things that aren't necessary within the religion. It's things that aren't fundamental part of the problem solving capacity of a particular practice. When you start to incorporate all of this extracurricular stuff, all it does, and from my point of view, it may strengthen for some people, it may strengthen someone's fear, right? Or it may strengthen someone's mythological embrace. But at the same time, too, it may weaken the objective problem-solving capacity of the religion as a whole. I'm not saying that that's the case, but that's a potential risk factor when you do stuff like that. Because when you start to project into religion these very fantastic things or these very kind of folklorish kind of aspects, and then people are actually able to go test it, right? Like it's a difference from 1,400 years ago when it's like you say something, or 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, you say something and people ain't got Google, or they ain't got an archaeological department or a paleontology department, or they've already discovered these kind of dinosaur bones or something like that. And there's carbon date testing and these other things, and people pop off about this, and then you get to a civilization that's actually testing it, and they're like, nope. I get this part and that part and this part, but this piece, nope. And then they say, well, where does that come from? And it's like, well, it's not really in our book. It's a story that this dude told, or it's in the book, but this is how people take it. And then these are some anecdotal incidents of somebody who did this and did that, and they had this effect and they had that effect. And it's kind of like, but for other folks, when they get to start to researching it, they grow up and they start to look at these things that they've studied and taken for granted, and then they go and they discover something, and you say, what? Like that's not really real? Like that ain't even in the thing? Like, or this isn't? Or they start to investigate the correlated piece. So they may be they have a firm belief in shaitan. Then they may have a misunderstanding of earwax. And then they study earwax and start to see that earwax isn't urine. And then they like, wait, if this, then why did my father, and I mean, that process is funky. So there's certain things where it's like, I don't even want to know, right? I don't even want the film, right? Because I don't believe Zamzam water is that important to Islam. I think would you have Islam without Zamzam water? For sure. Is it necessary to make wudu with? No. Is like, what about it is supposed to connect you to bring, like, it's only in one place in the whole world. You know, it's not, no. What is it going to do? And I'll gladly watch it because I'm open like that, and I'm already down the kufar hole. Like, he's already a kufar. It doesn't matter what he watches. He's a kufar, right? He's already slightly atheist anyway. Just let him have it. You know what I'm saying? So I'll watch it, send it. But I'm giving you this kind of like this almost mock protest, but in a very serious way about why. Because there's certain aspects that we put all of this weight on, whether it be, again, science or this or that, and you put all of this weight onto this stuff, and then it becomes like it's not even important anyway, but people put their attention on it. Then when that falls short, or that foundation starts to crumble because here's this other science which says, no, it doesn't have any real properties like this. Or here's this other piece of science that says, look, the whole process is flawed. And then here's this other piece of science that says, look, the stuff hasn't really been studied anyway. And you'll say like, I don't think I've just spent all this time investigating this. And now I'm really questioning. The only reason that I really took it serious was because it was in the Quran. But now people are starting to say they got healed from it. And now I'm looking at the science, and the science says that that's not the case. What am I supposed to believe? And it just becomes like, look, you didn't put yourself in this crazy position, and you've been trying to, and some people use it to reinforce their religion, build a fortress of ideas and thoughts and concepts to keep them comfortable in their faith because they think it's strengthening their faith. But in the process of you strengthening your faith, you're weakening the religion to other folks because now they're paying some attention, an overdue amount of attention and presence and importance into something that's not even really relevant to it's not even relevant to the practice of the religion. Right? It's just like this was in the Quran, and because it was in the Quran, if you don't believe this, then the rest of the Quran is suspect. Or if you don't believe this, your faith is suspect. Or if you don't abide by this, then this is suspect. And then when you get into it, like, yo, it's not even, it came from like a whole other 1,000 years before. Like, why is it even? So you get into these kind of pieces and you just like, look, I'm more concerned with not Putin, not Vladimir Putin, like farting. I'm more concerned with not eating beans so I don't have to, so I can get up for Fajr and not be Pooty. So I ain't got to keep going to make wudu because I'm Putin, right? I'm more concerned with that little stupid piece of reality than I am whether Zamzam water has healing properties. I'm more focused on this part, right? Because before I can even get to the Zamzam water, I wouldn't even be able to go into the mosque to get the Zamzam water because I can't stop Putin because I keep eating these beans. You know what I'm saying? So let me focus on these beans first, and then I can get to the Zamzam water, and then I'm going to get to Shaitan's pee in my ear. Then I'm going to get to, you see what I'm saying? Take it in chunks. People keep telling me Yasin water. Let me take a look at this Yasin water. What are we talking about? Yasin water. Write the surah, then drink it. Surah Yasin. Wait, what are we talking about? Stop it, y'all. Y'all got to stop this. Listen, man, y'all got to stop this. Maybe they recite a surah, like, so you're saying recite the surah over the water, Surah Yasin, and then blow into, nah, B. No. And you drink the surah? Is that what we're saying right now? But this is some Shia. We're not getting into that. I'm not getting into that. Not getting into that. Yeah, we're not finna do that because We're not getting into that. But there's I guess this is a thing. And it's, can we recite the Quran and blow on water as ruqya? And then, hold on, B. Hold on.
Noor says, my mom spends time reading the Quran on water and asks my sisters and I to drink it. She does this ruqya for protection. And I don't believe in this, and she now is angry and stopped speaking to me and decided that I'm not a Muslim. What to do? What's your advice? First of all, what you're doing, Noor, is correct. That is, ruqya is for healing an existing illness, not for protection. So what your mother is doing, that is reciting the Quran and blowing over water, this has been reported by some of the Salaf of doing it. There's nothing wrong in that as means of healing, as means of curing an illness, an evil eye, envy, black magic.
I'm out, man. I can't wait to talk to Mufti Abu Layth about this, because the Salafi is a very interesting thing that I'm trying to get into to understand specifically about what it is. But there's some Salafi things that are kind of funky. And do I believe in the power of prayer? I guess it will come down to that. Do I believe in the power of these things and people praying over things, and it gives these things a holy healing, a healing kind of aspect to it? That's so hard to tell. I mean, that is so incompatible. It pains me to even try and say it, because it's like, there's certain things that I have done that can be considered ruqya, but it's just basically comes down to the power of prayer. And do you believe that prayer actually has an effect in the world? Right? Like, is prayer going to change your circumstances and, in a real objective, material way? Let me back up real quick. Let me back up so people don't get out of hand. I was born Muslim, but I wasn't necessarily raised Muslim. So I was kind of raised outside of the scope. My mother and father were not born Muslim. My mother and father converted, and then they got married. And then the kids in that marriage were, quote unquote, born Muslim. But we weren't necessarily raised Muslim. And we were also introduced to all these other cultures. But at the same time, too, I have a very scientific kind of mind. I always wanted to be a scientist. So I was always interested in the science parts of the world. But I also had this layer of spirituality kind of layered in, but spirituality from different points of view. And then as you grow older, you start to see the effects of spirituality, the where it works, what it doesn't. And then you get to a real fine point. You do a study of your religion and history, you start to see that there's different layers and levels of your religion. There's religion for the very basic common folk. There's religion in the same religion. There's religion, kind of a piece of your religion that's more for the unlearned man. Then there's a piece of your religion that's for super smart, wise intellectuals. There's a piece of religion that's for the middle ground people to follow. And there's these layers, right, of kind of how you access and incorporate and move within your religion. And I think there's enough there to keep everybody satisfied to a degree, right? Maybe not for the entirety of their life and for every single situation, but there's enough there for the high learned intellectual, super smart philosopher dude to stay in tune and think about religion and use it as a problem solving mechanism. And then there's people way down on the bottom who are going to believe everything, just if it's written in Arabic, they believe it, right? So I don't want to downplay that too much, but there are people who believe all kinds of things, right? And because it has a certain Islamic credence or has a certain reference point that they can relate it back to the hadith or the Salafi or the Salaf or the Sahaba or something, then it becomes this kind of valid thing. Or because it's old, then it has to be valid because it's old and blah, blah, blah. So my religious perspectives are definitely on the fence. I'm not totally in any one camp. It is never shown to me that all it says in the Quran is don't die unless you're a Muslim, but you don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when your end time is going to come. You don't know what your circumstances are going to be. And you could still do all of these prayers and practices. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, I'm not accepting any of that stuff. Cast you down into the pit, right? Type situation. Or you could have done a bunch of crazy, wild stuff. And you're like, come on, right? So there's no like guarantees. And people say, well, the guarantee is you need to just not commit shirk and then da-da-da-da. But it's like, it gets a little funky. So anyway, as you go and process and analyze and walk through religion, there's certain parts of it that are just like, you try and make these correlations and you say, okay, if I pray, then this won't happen. But then it still happens. And then you're like, all right. In that particular instance, or your expectations. So people say, well, God works in mysterious ways, brother. He works in mysterious ways, man. You never know what you expecting, man. You know what I'm saying? And you say, okay, well, maybe it's something that I prayed for and it happened 2 weeks later, 2 years later, 20 years later, whatever. Again, you want to be on God's side. Like you constantly want to give God the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, yeah, maybe I didn't deserve it. You start to question yourself. Maybe I didn't deserve it. Maybe it wasn't time. Maybe it wasn't this. Maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it wasn't. Right? And then, of course, there's coincidences and, like, hey, man, I did this thing and then this thing happened and it happened because I prayed. And you say, well, did it happen because you prayed or did it just happen because it happened? Or would it happen if you didn't pray? And it's like, have you ever had benefit where you didn't pray? But then what happens? That turns into an evil thing. Where it's like, oh, no, man, that's just God testing you. And he's actually going to give you all of your good stuff now. So that's why he made you rich, because you're evil, right? And he wants to just lock you into your evil and then use you an example for me not to be evil because he's really giving you this thing. It's just like, that's rough and tough. That's a rough, tough pill to swallow. But I get it. I understand the logic, the counter logic to it. So there's a way in and out of all of it at the end of the day. And so I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence with certain things. Other things I understand. I understand the process. There's other things where I don't. It's a struggle. I do not believe it. Like, I don't believe that. I don't think that that's true. And I think that might be a corruption somewhere in the translation, or maybe it's a corruption somewhere in the practice. But there's something about this that is not right. It doesn't make sense. And you say, well, religion isn't supposed to make sense. Then what is it supposed to make? Because it's not supposed to make nonsense, right? So what is it supposed to make? If it's not supposed to make common sense, it's supposed to make an uncommon sense. It's supposed to make a higher sense that I can't access. Then if that's the case, even more so, because then there's people that can access that and people who can't. So, of course, so now you're right back at square one. Okay, there's things that I can't access. Because I can't access them, I don't know if I can hold them as truth. Like, I can't even give it faithful. I can't even do it with faith, where to believe in the unknown, because there's so many other things that aren't unknown, right? That I still don't necessarily follow. Right? I see them, I understand it, but I don't follow it. Right? I don't believe that what it's saying is true. I don't believe that this idol is true. I don't believe that it controls the weather. I don't believe that it does this. I don't believe it's going to better my chances with this or that. I see it, I understand it. Flip that into, here's the thing that you can't see at all. You can't access it, you can't understand it, it's way too vast, but it has all the answers. And it does control nature, and it controls this and controls that. And it's just like that play of like, is this really what we're doing? Are we really like saying that, but have faith in this? But I don't even follow this and I understand it. I can never understand this, but I'm meant to believe in it. It gets funky for some people. And I understand that argument, right? I understand people's critiques of religion as a whole, not just Islam, but religion as a whole. And I've studied a ton of religions. Religion as a whole and people's critiques of it, even within the religion, they're like, yo, this is very much so. Like, if you start to do this battle with this group and you start to use their own weird things against them, you're gonna lose. Because when you take the look back at the stuff that you do, you look crazy right now. Like, y'all look crazy right now, but we looking crazy for the Lord. And that's all that matters. I can look crazy for the Lord, right? The Lord ain't really worried about how I look. He worried about what's on the inside. He worried about what's on the inside, right? He worried about what's up in here. He's not worried about this. So you need to focus on this. Right? It's kind of like, all right, teach his own. Right. So my critiques of these things I like to get down to the basic answer, because what is this Yasin water or this ruqya or this blowing on thing? And I'm watching this sheikh who's a salaf, and he said some wild things before, but he's also said some things that actually it's this dude right here, him. Y'all recognize him. If you Muslim, you know this dude. You've seen this dude somewhere in your Google searches as a Muslim. You've seen this guy right here, that guy. Look at his face. Look at his face. And he has certain points which are like super solid. Like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, if you forgot to do this, just keep it moving, right? But the flip side of it is, he also says that, yes, you can blow on this water and it's for healing and the evil eye and these other things. And it's like, wait, this is the same guy who I really believed in when it comes to really basic things about Islam. But now we're getting into things like this, you blow on this water and it's supposed to protect you from such and such. That sounds very superstitious to me. That sounds very, very pagan to me, because now you're endowing this water with some type of spirit that it didn't have before, that God couldn't have gave to it. So now, and this is the issue with superstitio. If you look up the term superstition, it's a Roman term, which means superstitio, and it's a bad thing. Right? Even for the Romans, who were polytheist, who were pagans to a certain degree, right? Who had a pantheon of gods. And their claim against Christians, right? Their claim against Christians that Christians were superstitious. Now, these are people with temples with statues and Zeus and lightning bolts and stories and they're one of their complaints against the Christians was that the Christians were superstitious. Imagine that, right? Somebody calling a Christian superstitious. But the term of superstition is like you are trying to control the gods. That's what superstition means. You're trying to impose your will on the gods. And how do you do that? Well, the gods can't be controlled even with prayer, right? You have to appease them in this, but the gods have their own, in terms of Roman mythology and, that piece of their religion, and maybe Greek too, right? But anyway, they have a certain will that is above and beyond your prayers. Like your prayer, like you're just a basic human being. Like, just appease to these people, give them, these figures of deities, give them this food and offerings, and hopefully you'll get what is supposed to happen. And if not, da 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 da. But they looked at that as being kind of superstitious, to like, you can, salvation, and there's a guarantee if you just do this and do that. And it's kind of like, man, what is this relationship that you got that we don't have, right? So this idea of kind of being superstitious. So when I see things like this, it reminds, and as much as I respect some of his thought process and other pieces of Islam, this right here with this ruqya, I don't necessarily believe that. And I think even from a religious standpoint, it becomes that you're endowing water, right? You have the power to take the Quran, put it into follow this. You have a memorization of the Quran. You can get some water, speak into that water, the Quranic verses. Then that water now has been endowed with the holiness of the Quran. Now you're able to take that water and heal things with it. That doesn't sound like superstition to you? That doesn't sound like what do we want to call it? Energy transference? Like we're going to transfer the healing power of this into this? What's like? I mean, the Quran if somebody wanted to set the Quran on fire, they could. If you wanted to go into your Quran right now and rip the pages out of it and tear it up and burn it and set it, the Quran can't even defend itself. Just the book itself. It can't. We even say that, like when these Christian groups or these extremists, like, we're going to burn the Quran today. Like, so? Like, burn it. I'll give you one to burn, and I'm going to make 80 more to replace it. Like, have at it. Like, knock yourself out. It's just a book. At the end of the day, it doesn't really have any special powers, right? And you say, but if I speak it into it, that just sounds funky to me. Sounds weird to me. And when you reduce that down. And this is with holy water too, because holy water is the same way, right? It's holy water that's been blessed, right? Now it has these powers. No, I don't believe that. But what does it come down to? The core question, which is the burning question, which is the most controversial question, comes down to, is there a power in prayer? Right? Is there power in prayer? Yes. Where is the power in prayer? Where is it located? Here. Up in here. Not in a bottle of water. Right? Not in a bottle of water. Not in a glass of orange juice. Not in the power of prayer is the power of unity, right? Like getting people together, right? Getting people focused on one page, like reinforcing your mental capacity to be able to bear things that you possibly could not bear if you didn't have some type of mental guard to allow you to see the good in things versus only seeing the bad in things. So yes, there's a power in prayer, right? It's a mental power in prayer. Is there an actual, I'm going to energize this bottle of water by speaking into it, by reciting holy scripture or doing holy motions over it? I don't believe that. You can believe that. Again, that's fine, right? But right? It says modern man gave up his heart for intellect, wisdom for knowledge. That statement right there in and of itself. You don't have all of your access to men of the past are from men of the future, like modern men. Like you read about the histories of the men of the past. You're not, and I'm gonna just go out on a limb. You're not at the museum reading 1,000-year-old parchment to get an understanding of Moses, or to get an understanding of Aristotle, or get an understanding. Like you're not going to the sites in Egypt, or going to the sites in Greece, or going to the archaeological sites in a certain place and actually reading the cuneiform or reading the ancient Aramaic or reading the archaic whatever to get an understanding of these people's thoughts and ideas. You're getting a translation in whatever language that you speak, modern language that you speak, which is probably relatively a new language in the face of human beings, spoken or written. And you're getting some type of some form of explanation. You're getting access to it through modern men. Even no matter what piece of text you're reading, like you're getting some type of interpretation through modern man's approach to what this thing is. And all men of the past weren't just these men operating off heart and they were dummies. Like they didn't understand any type of scientific process, if not the working with materials, but they understood scientific theory and the way things process and the way the world works. And so when somebody would come out of the cave, or somebody would come out of the water, or somebody would come out of the forest with this tale of something that they experienced, everybody wasn't just like, yeah, you're on the edge because, the heart is what it is. Like people are critiquing them like, does this make sense? Right? Does this make sense? There was what is his name? Menides. He's basically a Jewish scholar, a Jewish philosopher, right? Who was at one point the physician of the sultan, one of the sultans in Egypt, I think. He's the personal physician of one of the sultans, and he's a Jewish doctor or Jewish philosopher. And he had wrote this letter, and the letter was whether the letter was some people say, or this was the story. The funky part is I don't want to get into the back and forth because it was two dudes debating against each other about this point, and one was using a letter for his point of view, and another dude was using a letter for his point of view. And then when the dude who came back to rebut the letter, he came at me, he said, yo, this letter was written to a group of Jews who were thinking about converting to Islam, but they had some problems. They had some issues that they needed to get rectified before they converted to Islam. And one of the issues that they had was that they were looking for, because Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam announced that he was prophesized in the Old Testament, right? And there was this verse, and this verse was, this was Arabia, and then this was this, and he was that. And so they were like, look, we're reading through this, we're going back to the Old Testament, and, you know, going back to the Hebrew Bible. It's not even the Old Testament for them, it's their Bible, right? They're going back to their Bible, and they're looking at these passages, and they're like, we need to get somebody who has a better understanding of these passages and these texts before we make a decision to convert. Right? What does that sound like? Does that sound like a group of people that are just operating off their heart? This ancient group of people operating off their heart, that they're just they heard the message and then they just dive in fully. And then it's like, because men of that time didn't have intellect. That sounds like a very intellectual exercise for someone to make a claim, then for a group who's thinking about, man, I really like parts of this religion, but there's some things I need to get clear, brother. And they send it to a philosopher to give them some type of feedback about the authenticity of the text and the interpretation of this text. That's an intellectual exercise, man. It's not just wholehearted religion, throw it in peace, bro. That's not, you better believe that a lot of I believe this to be true, that a lot of the critiques of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the critiques of Jesus, the critiques of all the prophetic people who came through and announced that they were prophets sent by God and had divine revelation, that a lot of their critiques, or a portion of their critiques, let's say a lot, wasn't coming from people who were just super dumb, right? And it wasn't coming from people who were just super, my heart needs to be changed, and people who didn't even care from a heart standpoint. It was people who's like, how's this going to affect the economy? Right? How is your peace going to affect the economy? Yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay. There's the divine revelation. There's God punishing people. There's a remembrance. I get all that. But how is this going to affect my economy? You know, or how is this going to affect? So you say that you have a certain, you know, is this going to affect my family? Like, how is this going to affect my family? Like, what does this mean if my family doesn't come along with me? What does this have to do with my marriage? What does this have to do with my pre-existing kind of status in society? What does this have to do with, you know, we're studying this kind of, does this have anything to do with science? Is there some science? Like, can you prove any of this stuff that you're saying? Because we didn't really believe it before, but now you're coming with a kind of reinforcement. Do you have anything of evidence to kind of prove that this is actually the da-da-da-da-da-da-da? So I'm sure there are people who just did it because they hated him. They didn't like his religion. It was against their religion. But I don't think even those people, everybody was just like, it's bad and the devil's inside of us and blah, blah, blah. Right? I'm sure there's people with some very credible critiques who are just like, can you answer this question for me? And it was like, in some cases, probably could. And they were like, satisfactory. Other cases, probably not. And it was like, you know what? We're going to stay Christian. You know, we're going to stay Jewish, right? Or we're just going to leave, right? What happened when he went to Medina? Everybody didn't convert. It wasn't like, it's here now. Let's get it cracking, right? Like, people left. Jews left. People were expelled, you know, and it was like, why? It's like, because, you know, maybe you were unsuccessful in convincing us on an intellectual basis. Like, if we're all believers, we're mu'mineen, like, we're all believers. We get it. One God. Okay, cool. Abraham, got it. This, that, boom. What about this? Then, okay, I don't really see the difference if that's the case. There's some subtle differences, but, you know, I'm kind of good where I'm at. Just my points of view. Anyway. Jesus was nailed, spit on, beat, and stoned. Sounds like slavery to me. Yeah, but not his entire life. That happened at the very end of his life. And it was a period of time, it was a few days. Like, Jesus wasn't on the cross for 30 years. So he spent the majority of his life actually preaching, not a slave, He just met an end, which was actually a way that the Roman government dealt with criminals of any capacity, right? So I don't know what the point behind that was, but I get it. Christianity, a monotheistic religion? Yeah, it's the same. Well, I don't want to let me not say yeah. Like yeah, for sure. Certain religions, if you look at it from different points of view, they look at it as, yes, there is a central God with different expressions, and that these expressions can be so distinct that they can be considered a separate entity, but it is all from one source. So there was a dude who was talking about Hinduism, where there's one God with 33 million interpretations or something like that. So it's kind of like a refinement of one Allah with 99 attributes. And, you focus on these different attributes and what they mean, and they all add back up to the whole. But just more of like going further and further down that rabbit hole. And then you got other pieces where people didn't think that Jesus was divine at all. He didn't think that he was the son of God, or didn't think he was this. And it was just which version of Christianity. There's arguments all through the history of Christianity. That's why it was so contentious. That's why you needed councils of Nicaea, and you needed all these other things to kind of standardize what was going on. Same thing in Islam. You needed these certain councils of Uthman, to kind of put a clamp down on everything, because there was so many stories and hadiths and so many different points of view. And even with the Quran, it was people with different recitations and versions of the Quran. And it was like, we got to get this all under one roof to get something standardized. So there's people who would be of an approach to say, like, yes, we believe in one God, but we believe he had a son. You know what I'm saying? But we believe he had a son, though. You know what I'm saying? So there's one God, and he had one son, too. So we're not saying that, there's another God, but he did have a son. You know what I'm saying? So you got that kind of point of view. It doesn't really change that we believe in many gods. We just believe it's all in the same. You know what I'm saying? But you can make the argument that it is very much so very much so a polytheistic approach, depending on how you want to look at it. Council of Nicaea was promoting paganism. Well, what's paganism? What's paganism? What is paganism? If you're gonna assert that the Council of Nicaea was all about promoting paganism, what was paganism? If the Roman church, if the Roman society was paganistic, and Christianity was born into and out of the Roman society, literally born into and out of Roman society, right? Christianity didn't predate the Roman Empire. Born into a pagan society, born out of a pagan society. And the people who practice it would be practicing it, who would be converting out of paganism into Christianity, would have been pagan. So you got people that are coming out. Are you a full blank slate when you come and convert from one religion to another? I don't think so. I think you might stop doing certain things, but there are other factors that are kind of ground into you that you got to either kind of fight or rebut. But you got to find a place. Perfect example to there's certain traditions within all religions that I would say, well, I don't say all, that's a lot. There's definitely certain tradition in Islam which one can make the argument that is pagan. It comes from a pagan source, right? And there's some revisionism that takes place or has to take place. Then revisionism solely just being in a reinterpretation of the story or adding in a new story. Where there's certain aspects to it where it's like this particular tradition that we do has roots in a pagan society. and we've transformed it into an Islamic thing, right? So it no longer, because it didn't have any real spiritual we don't acknowledge the pre-existing religious context or spiritual context which was in this particular item of practice from this pagan society. So for us, this thing was never holy, or it was never sacred, or it was never a god, or it was never a practice that actually had any holy aspects to it. It was just some people who didn't know no better just doing something. So all we did was just take it over and redefine it, redetermine it, whatever the situation was, if not destroy it, right? But there is that process that takes place in religion. And when you talk about promoting paganism, what does that mean? You can't re-listen to this because you can't save these anymore unless they're a IGTV, and I'm not saving it to IGTV. So if you're gonna duck in and duck out, think you're gonna listen to this later, this doesn't save as a story anymore for some reason. I think they did that so people could just stay on, or so many people were on IG Live in the past few months or so that they had to do some optimization, and one of those optimizations was this, where you can't this doesn't save as a story anymore. It only can save as an IGTV. Christianity was in Africa before America. Yeah, there was Christianity in Africa way before. Some Africans didn't get introduced to Christianity in America. There's Christianity in Africa for a long time. Think about that. Christianity, let's say, was it around in 500 AD? Yes. When did the American slave trade start in a real serious way? Let's say the 1500s, 1600s. So you got 1,000-year gap where Africa could have been exposed to Christianity. It didn't have to just come through some Americans or some British. Ethiopian kings, but yeah, not even in Ethiopia. There's this one thing of this queen, who was Christian, right? I can't think of her name. This was an African queen, and I don't think it was like Ethiopian. I think she was like, I don't know if she might have been Catholic. Ethiopian I think is considered Orthodox, but I don't think Ethiopians are considered Catholics. But I think she was converted like out of Catholicism or something like that. But again, says a lot of modern day Christian theology was developed in Africa, such as the Trinity. West African. Not the Queen of Sheba. It was another woman. That's Queen of Sheba's old. She was like new in terms of recent history, 1600s, something like that. Like she wasn't old like that. Not like 1,000 years old, 2,000, not 5,000 years old. She was recent. No, that's too far. King Saul is too far. I have been on here for a long time. I'm finna get off though now. It's not freezing, I'm sorry. It is long. Have the books of the Bible been tampered with? What? How did this always turn into a religious conversation? Because I got a bunch of Muslims in here and they ask religious questions. And then I got to expose my kufar. I don't want to be a kufar. I want to believe. I want to be mu'minun. I think I believe. I want to believe, but you got to give me something to believe in, baby. You can't give me something to believe in. Allow me to separate the wheat from the chaff sometimes. Has the Bible been tampered with? Yes. Yes, it has. Different levels of tampering, though. When you say tamper, when you say the Bible, again, go back to ask yourself the questions. Bible. What is the Bible? Is the Bible a book? In modern times, it's a book, but it's not really a book. The Bible is a library, right? Biblioteca, right? The Bible is a library, right? It is a collection of books and stories and notes and all types of stuff, right? You just getting a compilation of all these things together. Because again, why would there be an Old Testament and with the New Testament? They're two separate books. Why did they get together? Because somebody put them together. So in order to make sense of Jesus, you need the Old Testament, right? You can't, if you just start with just New Testament, Jesus day one, and you start rocking, there's some things that aren't going to make, I don't want to say things that aren't going to make sense, but you need the reference points of what he's addressing or his lineage or all these other things, right? And I need to actually, let me double check that to see how many times, if Jesus references things from the Old Testament. Does he? For you Christians out there, does Jesus reference the Old Testament or figures from the Old Testament? Who are figures from the Old Testament? Moses, Abraham, anything before Jesus, right? Is it Isaiah, Ishmael, like all of those folks all come before Jesus, right? So, but bro, don't call you a kufar. I'm not afraid of the word kufar, right? Y'all put this negative kufar like it's a curse word. It's like, listen, man, there's certain parts of the stuff that I don't believe. There's certain parts of the stuff that I do believe. There's certain parts of the stuff which I'm still on the fence about. And if some people in that space will call me a kufar, people have called me all kinds of, I can't, this brother's on a whole nother thing. We can't even talk. Like, it's not even an engagement. So, it is what it is. It doesn't hurt me. Your words don't matter. At the end of the day, it's what God thinks, and God knows what's in people's hearts. And God knows where things have went awry, and God knows what's most important. We tend to just think a word is, but anyway, off track. So has the Bible been tampered with? First, what is the Bible? Do you need the Bible? What components make up the Bible? Do you consider the Talmud the Bible? Do you consider the New Testament the Bible? When did the New Testament get wrote? What's all in the New Testament? Was it ever edited? Was it ever taken out? How much of the original material do we have? How much do we don't? How much of it is guessing? How much of it is interpretation? How much of it is translation? How much of it did Jesus speak Latin? Nope. So I don't know. I don't think Jesus spoke Latin, but they say he spoke Aramaic or Greek or possibly Hebrew, but did he speak Latin, which is a whole other piece? Probably not. Then why is the Bible, a big chunk of the history of the Bible, written in Latin? Okay, because that's what the language of the Roman Empire was, and that's who. Okay, and why was it in some cases illegal to translate things out of Latin, the Bible, into another language, right? Because why? It was considered heretical, right? Because Latin was considered to be the language of the church. So what were people who speak in Latin? Jesus probably never spoke Latin, but the Bible is written in Latin. So you have people that are practicing Christianity, putting Latin words into Jesus's mouth, which is a language that he didn't speak. So was the Bible tampered with? Of course, you have to translate this for sure, right? Here's where it gets funky, though, right? Right? No, Latin, not Greek, Latin. So a large chunk at a period of time in Europe, in the Catholic Church, the language of the church was Latin. It wasn't Greek, it was Latin. And that's why you had how do you get to something like the King James Version Bible, right? Is you get it as a form of translation or a chain of people trying to translate Latin by breaking away from the Catholic Church, forming the Anglican Church or forming their own churches, these schisms, and the schism a lot of times was linguistic. So it was along linguistic barriers of like, look, the common man can't understand Latin. So the same way that you got Muslims today who go into the mosque and it will be Juma or even prayer, and they can't understand the prayer, right? They can't speak Arabic. They don't understand it, right? And so it becomes, nah, brother, you got to do the khutbah in, do some khutbah in English, or do some khutbah in Urdu, or do some khutbah or some du'as in the language that the people can understand what they're saying. Because if you just sit here and you do it all in Arabic, there's a chance that people, even though they have on a thobe and a kufi and a big beard and all this other stuff, they may not know what you're saying, right? Because it's in Arabic and they don't speak Arabic, right? They may be able to speak it, but they can't understand it. So the reference points have to be clear. So if you do dua in Arabic, do dua in English too. You know, like, I'm not saying do the salah in English, but you know, at least there's other peripheries that you can. So there's, if you're trying to figure out like, how do I experience that? Why does that sound strange? Latin into English, why is it such a big deal? Think about today in certain mosques where they do the Juma only in Arabic, right? And you sitting there and you don't know what's going on. You just waiting for the adhan or the Iqamah to get called, and then you're like, all right, now I'm in, right? So, you know, at one point it was made illegal, right? Because it was all these political undercurrents and other things to try and translate. So you get a King James Version Bible, literally the King James Version, which was actually, if you read some of the original versions, it's in an older form of English. So it might be something that you might not even be able to read successfully with your modern English eyes. So even that has to be updated and revised and translated to fit a more modern time and speak to a modern thing. Certain things in the Bible were actually written by I think his name is Tinsdale. So let there be light. Like, I don't think let there be light is in the Bible, but it's in the King James Version of the Bible. If I'm not mistaken, please let me know if I'm wrong. Like, I don't think that the translation is that from what people were doing. They were translating from the Latin. Then you have people who are like, you know what, we can't trust the Latin, so we need to translate from the Greek. Then you have people who say, well, we can't trust the Greek, we need to go back and translate from the Hebrew. So you have people who translate directly from Hebrew into English. And that's why you get these different versions and different points of view, because people are like, well, the Latin translation has all these weird poetic things that probably didn't exist in struggling to kind of translate and communicate this. And you see the same thing in kind of Quran. So you can read certain translations of the Quran and read the same verse, and they're two different verses, and they're both in English, but they're read two different ways, right? Because that translator chose the best way to try and get the feeling of this particular word, because there is no real translation from this particular phrase out of Arabic into English. So you have to try and find other words which get close to the feeling. And in that process, you get a certain level of loss of the original meaning if you want to be semantic about things. But you have to take that serious when you think about people saying like the Quran is only legitimate in Arabic. That's the language that God, quote unquote, put it in. And that's the language that Muhammad, quote unquote, spoke. And so the Quran is only valid, quote unquote, in Arabic, because that's the language it was originally written in, and you'll never be able to retain the energy or the power, or even just the meaning of certain sayings, the nuances embedded in certain sayings, because it's written in a language that's completely foreign to yours, and then a gap of 1,500 years. Right, so even Quranic Arabic isn't necessarily tied into directly with modern speaking Arabic. Right, from my understanding, from the examples and things that I've picked up along the way, is that even Quranic Arabic isn't like modern Arabic. There had to be there is still kind of like a gap in certain places, in certain cases. And there's things that are in the Quran which don't have a meaning at all, right? There's certain things where people don't know what this means, right? In Arabic or any other language, like, we don't know what these things mean, right? So I think it's Alif Lam Mim, right? Nobody knows what that means. And unless I'm wrong, please let me know, right? Right. And then not only is it translation, but it's also the transliteration. Like, you have to, the syntactical structure, the way the sentences are structured in Arabic, or like in Chinese, for example, you can't just translate those words directly into words to another language, because it'll be jumbled. The sentence won't make sense. It'll be like, monkey jump Tyrannosaurus monkey bars, or something like that. And it's like, wait a minute, we got to fix this, right? And put it syntactically and grammatically correct, because the grammars are different as well. So when you talk about, has the books of the Bible been tampered, which is the original question, you say yes, but there's levels. There's honest mistakes, there's honest updates, there's honest revisions, there's honest translations? Has there been dishonest things put into the Bible which didn't exist prior? I would say yes, but not necessarily in a negative way. So if you have somebody, 1,800 years, or 1,500 years, or 1,000 years after Jesus, in a language which is nobody speaks Aramaic, and Jesus has been reported to speak Aramaic, and you're trying to understand what Jesus said in your own tongue and make it make sense, then you would say, look, I need this to say, let there be light. Because let there be light, we all get it, right? Everybody get it? Let there be light? Okay, cool. Did Jesus actually say that, or was that actually in the Old Testament? Let there be light? I don't know. But it works. So is that doing a disservice to the religion? Is that tampering with the religion in a negative way? Is that tampering with these other things in a negative way? Probably not. Right? If you're not, for the layman who's just interested in getting the message and getting a better understanding, and it doesn't really matter if it's let there be light or not, because it doesn't matter, right? It's still I still believe in this force. I still believe in my practices, and I pray and I confess and I do this and I do that and I do the basic things. And whether let there be light is legitimate or not doesn't matter to me, right? So it's like, how much of these corruptions or these insertions or these adaptations are valid, and how much are they not? I mean, does it really matter? Think about this. If there was no Council of Nicaea, or the other council, because it wasn't the Council of Nicaea that I think put the Bible together. I think there was another one, or there's a few councils, right? And just think, if there was never a compilation, and it was just, if Christianity just stayed and remained as this vast complex of multiple different revelations and different people writing, and some of it's not even revelation, it's like biography, like this person is telling a story about something that happened, and then you take that to be holy, or the word of God, or whatever, even though it was written clearly by some dude. You'll say, like, but he was written through divine revelation, so you say it's written by, whatever, however you want to play it. Even if it wasn't compiled into one book, would there be enough just in, say, the Gospel of Mark for you to be Christian? Right? If that's the only thing you had access to was the Gospel of Mark, or the Gospel of John, or the book of Psalms, right? If you only have access to one of these books, because at one point in time, it was just that. It was like, it's that book. And then it's that book over there. Then he wrote a book, and then that person had a book. And it was like a decision of like, okay, let's put all these books together. Right? But at one point you didn't. You only had access to this, to access to that. Was that enough for you to be Christian? Yeah. It was enough for those people to be Christian. So, why not? I love how Lupe makes a strong case for the opposing view. I can make a strong case for Islam too, like just as readily, right? But understand something, a strong case versus other things. You're leaving out a bunch of other stuff, and you have to focus on the question that the person asked, right? The question the person asked is, the Bible been tampered with? The answer is yes, but his question is very vague, and the answer is very vague. So let's break down his question and make his question more comprehensive and more sophisticated. Is this the Bible? What is the Bible? What is tampered? What does that mean? Then before we even get into what is your goals for asking this question, he may be a person that's a super atheist, or he might be a Muslim and is just trying to like, yeah, man, I told you the Bible was tampered. Lupe said it, right? Lupe said yes. So I understand that people operate off simplicity sometimes. So I like to break things down to their constituent parts and explain it. And then when you get the yes, the yes is even more complex and sophisticated, because it's like, this is what is behind that yes. Here's these elements of it, right? Is it negative? Is it positive? Are there do you think it was malicious in some cases? Has it been misused in certain cases? For sure. Have people misused the Quran? For sure. Have people potentially misused the Bhagavad Gita? For sure. Have people potentially misused, like, people will take, these documents can't defend themselves. right? And they're open to interpretation, and they're open to kind of hyperbole, and they're open to focus on specific things versus others. They're focused on leaving things out. One of the great kind of pieces when you look at these apologetics between Christians or Muslims, Muslims do this. I don't want to say they do it a lot, but they'll focus on one verse. And then the person from the Christian apologetic side, he'll come in and be like, no, you got to read that verse with the whole thing. You can't just come in and pick this one line. You got to read the whole thing to get an understanding of what the context is for somebody saying this. If you just focus on this one line, then yeah, that's going to look crazy. But it's the same thing if you do in Islam. If you just pull this one ayat and say, that, but you don't look at the context within that ayat, and you don't look at what it says, you say, it says, you should kill this person, right? You're like, oh my God, it says you should kill this person. But then the very next line, or at the end of the surah, it says that, but it's better if you didn't. And if you kill somebody without just cause, then it says if you've killed the whole entire world and blah, 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 blah. But if you just focus on that one line, then you'll see like, oh yeah, this looks bad. So you have to, if you're going to do this kind of like have things been tampered with, have things been misinterpreted, have things been changed, you got to do it across the entire spectrum of all practices, whether it's religious, spiritual, or secular. So yes, people will use things for their own, they'll use their own kind of points of view. Hey man, that's my little sister B. Chill out, Prophet Kadar. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make sure you get blocked after this, homie. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to apologize for that one, homie, because you finna get up out of here. Yeah, these people are ridiculous. Yeah, you see he apologized right now, Faji. You seen him? Or her, whoever that is? Like, chill out. I definitely took a screenshot because I was like, let me go back and no, she's actually my sister. Not that she's my sister in spirit. Like, no, that's actually my little sister, and I will gladly put hands on you for her. Prophet, you need to chill, homie. What language is the Quran in? It's in every language. It's in English. It's in Mexican. It's in Mexican. It's in Spanish. It's in Arabic. But people, the trend is for people to say that the actual Quran is only written in Arabic and it cannot be written in any other language. Which I would say is true. Right? It came down and there's nuances and it was written for a very specific group of people in a very specific period of time, and that's what it was written for. It wasn't written in Hebrew. It wasn't written, and there were definitely Jews there. It wasn't written in Latin. There was definitely Christians there. So it was written for the people who needed to hear the message. Lupe, what are your thoughts on the hypocrisy of protesters out calling the Black Lives Matter, with protesters calling out Blue Lives Matter, yet they're protesting for freedom the same way the Black and Latino freedoms fight for freedom? What do you talk about the hypocrisy of protesters calling out Blue Lives Matter? What do you mean? Like, people are mad that the people are protesting against the police? Or that the police are protesting? Blue Lives Matter is like the police, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Quran has never changed because God's words don't change. I mean, you can believe that. That's fine. Right? But I definitely, so you can believe that, that's fine. Okay? I definitely know that even just from the order of the Quran that we have today, wouldn't have been the order of the Quran that they had back in the time of the Salaf, right? And in certain parts, the Quran wasn't even finished yet, let alone Baqarah came second. No way. Baqarah didn't even get revealed into Medina, right? So you're already into, but you get that second. And so, well, it's not just the order of the Quran that matters, it's these other parts, but I think it does. I think it matters very much so. But it speaks to people's ideas of when you get locked into, has the Quran been changed? Changed from what? From its original source, right? Changed from in what capacity? In the translation sense, again, remember, a lot of people don't know. This one person who didn't know what the Quran was. And they say, well, what language is the Quran in? And look at the explanation you have to give them. Well, the trend is that the Quran is written in every language, right? It's in Mexican. It's in China talk. It's in Mandarin. It's in Spanish. It's in English. It's been translated into every language. But some people don't consider those translations to be the Quran. They believe that the Quran is only valid in Arabic, and that what we're reading is, I think, considered tasfir, right? Or an interpretation of the Quran, but it's not actually the Quran itself. The Quran can only be written or only in its true form in Arabic. So when you tell somebody that, who even maybe some Muslims didn't know that, right? Fun facts, like, really? But you can take 2 English Qurans, and one from Pickthall, one from this person, one from that person, one from this interpretation. You can get more than that. You can look at them. You go surah for surah, and there will be surahs that are different. And for somebody who reads the Quran, unless you have that explanation in tow, and you say, well, look, there's different translations of it, somebody could easily say, well, these Qurans are different. And they are. Like, this isn't the same word. This isn't the same thing. There's a different thing. And then you say, well, there's a multiplicity of words, there's connotations, there's fluidity in certain, but it's like whatever this person who wrote this quote unquote Quran, because that's what's written on the cover, says, this is this and this is that, but they're 2 different readings. And for the uninformed mind, they'll just be like, when somebody comes to them and says, the Quran's never been changed, they'll look at you like you're a liar. And unless you're able to make the distinction between that, there's the Arabiya, there's the Kitab al-Arabiya, whatever. I don't even know the proper pronunciation of it. But there's this, the holy Arabic Quran, and then you have all these translations. So if you come to someone and say, man, the Quran's never been changed, and then they'll present you with 2 Qurans, you'll be like, but those aren't Qurans. Then it'll be like, what do you mean these aren't Qurans? Then you got to say, well, the Quran is only written in Arabic. Then I'm like, can you read Arabic? Like, nope. So then it's like... Then it's like, so what did you read? Like, I read the Quran. But which Quran did you read? I read the Quran that was in English. But you just said that wasn't the Quran. But it is the Quran. But you mean it's not the Quran, but it's not the Quran. There's a Quran, and then there's the Quran. And you just get like funky. Instead of just saying like, look, man, there's a version of the Quran in Arabic, which in Arabiya, as they say, has never been changed. Right? It has remained consistent from the time that it was been put together by Uthman all the way up to 4. Before Uthman, there was people who disagreed, but they did this council and they put the Quran together and they ordered it in a certain way. I think Abu Bakr, right? So yeah, Abu Bakr, and then you had Uthman, right? Who had these big kind of major pieces with moving the Quran around or getting rid of the fat or whatever the situation may be, right? And then beyond that, the Arabic translation has remained consistent from that time. throughout. So if you could read Arabic and you could sit down with an Arabic Quran, you could read one from 2020 and you go back and read one from 1600s and you go back and read one from 1400s and you go back and read one from if you can get super close to one that was written in the time of Uthman, then you can read that one too, and they should all read the same, right? Shouldn't be any problems, right? But there's these translations of the Quran which we don't consider to be that particular translation or chain of Qurans, and that Arabic Quran, these other versions, right, which in and of themselves, yes, they are changed, right? They change because as you get different interpretations, different periods of time, different grammars, different societies, different places, they're going to read different because there might be words within this new group of converts, or whatever they call them, these new groups of folks that are foreign, they're not Arab, that don't speak Arabic, that their version of the Quran, they don't have words which translate directly from this, and the grammar is different, all is different. So that constitutes a change of the Quran. It's not bad. It's not like God doesn't exist now and the Prophet Muhammad, what's lupe? What's wrong with you? This is nuts. It's simple. You do it, you say it, you explain it, and you get it out the way. You don't just beat people up for being kuffar. You don't stand on the hill that the Quran has never been changed, and you sit and somebody poses you with a Quran and then you're forced to say, well, that's not the Quran. Then I'm like, well, what are you reading then? Because if you tell it, and you set yourself up for failure. And you ain't got to do that. You just give people what the history is. This is what really happened. And you keep it moving. Now let's read the thing. Let's get into it. Like, don't do that to yourself. Lupe, I don't think you realize you're unofficially starting the Islamic Revolution. Stop it. This, and the funky part, here's funkiness. None of this is new. None of what I'm saying is new. None of what I'm saying is controversial in terms of the body of Islam. This has been around, and I would say from the time the Prophet Muhammad died, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, from the moment that he died, you've had schism. I would even say that within the body of his life, when he was alive, you had people that were like, I don't know about that. And the funky part is that you did. People like, nah, when we like, shout to Mufti Abu Layth on this one. When they were talking about the Hajj and when the Salaf went with Muhammad to Medina, or I'll take that back. When the Salaf went from Medina back to Mecca, and it was like, okay, we need to do the Hajj back to Mecca and do all of the procedures and the circumambulation and the running back and forth between, Sawaf and Mawaf, or whatever it is, the two mountains or whatever it is. Where it was like, yo, they were like, we're not doing that because that's pagan. Like, that comes from some pagans. Like, they do that. They do the running back and forth between these two things. Like, we're not doing that. That's not even, and then you get this revelation where it's like, you know what, it's cool. Don't worry about it. I talked to the man. He said it's cool. Right? This is what it is now, but it's cool. But even they were like, I don't know about this. Right? Because Jojo and them was doing it up the street. And I know Jojo and them ain't Muslim. They was over there praying to that horse the other day. And I just seen them when they came and did the pilgrimage. They was running back and forth. I'm not running back and forth. So this stuff is, none of this stuff is like new, man. It's been around. What you experience, and I can't wait to talk to Mufti Abu Layth about this. What you're experiencing is you're experiencing people in modern times trying to get back to the Salaf era, right? You're trying to get, I'm jumping off after this for everybody who's texting me like, yo, what Slew, you've been on there for like way too long. But it's like, look, I ain't got nothing else to do. Like this, this is what it is. I ain't got nothing else to do. If you got something better for me to do, I'm gonna go in there and do it. But right now, this is what it is. And I enjoy having these conversations with folks. What you get, and we'll end on this, but what you get is, for the non-Muslims in the chat, and even for some of the Muslims in the chat who may not know this, what you get is people in modern times who are trying to, who look at the modern world today, and they have to say, to a certain degree, and you have to admit this, like, this world is out of whack. You know what I'm saying? Like, porn is everywhere. You know, the societies are like kind of crazy. Men aren't covering, women aren't covering. it seems like every tenet of the, in terms of the world at large, not even Muslim or non-Muslim, like look at all this crazy stuff that's happening in the world. It has to be because people don't believe in God, and there's this and there's that and blah, blah, blah. And there's people who think like, man, this is because, we're not practicing the Islam correctly, or we need to get back. We're losing our footing in terms of the ummah, and for the ummah to not get sucked into this process of de-Islamization or being recultured in a certain capacity, we need to get back to the roots of Islam. And when people say, well, where are the roots of Islam? And you say, where's the time of the Prophet Muhammad and the Sahaba, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And you like, we need to get back to that. We need to dress like that. We need to act like that. We need to pray like that. We need to walk and talk like that. Anything that between now and then is innovation. It's what they call it, bidah. Is it bidah? Right? It's the work of the kuffar. It's misinterpretations. It's a product of the materialistic lifestyle of the sultanates and the caliphs, and it's Turkey's fault, or no, it's Damascus's fault, or no, it's this fault. So we need to just get back to the Salaf, right? We need to get back to the Salafi, right? And we need to get back to the literal interpretation. We need to get back to the hardcore hustle and bustle of when Islam was with the Prophet Muhammad Islam, right? And when you do that, and you'll say, oh, now we got the money because now Saudi Arabia has all this money, and we're with the Wahhabis and these Salafis, and we finna impose this strictness across the world, and then we're gonna build. If you want a mosque, you gotta teach Wahhabi, or you gotta teach some of the Salaf, and you gotta do this and you gotta do that, and blah blah blah, and they build that. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to print up the Qurans, and we're going to print up the Hadiths, and we're going to print up this, and we're going to print up that, and we're just going to blah, 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 and it's going to be Salaf. You got to get back to the Salaf, bro. You need to be wearing a thobe, brother. Where your thobe at, bro? Where your kufi at, bro? Where your done? Where your leather socks at, brother? Where your blah, 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 blah. And when you do that, there's going to be people who are going to say, okay, let's go. And then when you go back there, you're going to start to realize or see certain things where certain things are going to be done for the better in terms of the religious aspect. Like, yes, people are probably going to pray more, and they're probably going to do this more, and they're probably going to pay more attention to this, and they're probably going to do this, and they're probably going to do that. But then there's all this other stuff, which is going to get thrown up, right? All of these everybody didn't agree, right? Everybody still lived there was a lot of tension, right? And there was a lot of conflict, and there was some peace, but then that peace was based on this group. And then there was a lot of discord. And then there was a lot of cohabitation. Like they were living with Jews, or they were living with Christians. He was preaching to Christians and Jews of the time, right? And what does that relationship look like? And it wasn't this forced conversion if everybody had to convert. So it's like, if we go back there, can I be Jewish now? If we go back there, can I be Christian? Because Prophet Muhammad didn't really have any problem with these Christians or these Jews, right? He may have had a problem with that particular Jew who didn't like him. But the rest of these people, they were just kind of mu'minin. Everybody's kind of chilling, right? So when you go back, it opens up things that, may have got settled during that period of time between the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Salaf, and the Caliph, and everything that happens today. And there's been a lot of talk and circumstance. Because guess what happens when you go all the way back to the time of the Prophet? You skip the Hadiths, right? Because it's like, when did the Hadiths start to congeal? And even in that time, you had wild stories. Even in the time, that didn't really happen. How could even Prophet Muhammad didn't even go to that village? So how could he speak to this dude if he wasn't even there? Or the dude who said this, he isn't even alive anymore. Or just kind of craziness, where it takes people do the process of trying to refine and understand certain tenets and finer points of the religion and work all that stuff out. So when you just jump wholesale back into the time of the Salaf, you bring a lot of that baggage out. And that's why I think you get kind of weird things like this ruqya and other things, and it's just kind of like, man, we've grown as a religion to not believe in that kind of superstitious stuff. It doesn't have any. People have looked at it, assessed it, researched it, studied it, understood it, and it's like, if you want to do it, but don't live or die by that. So anyway, that's that part. I'm getting out of here. This is way too long. He said, "Don't get leather socks with the." Stop it, B. I'm getting out of here. I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all learned something. Again, I hope this isn't just as a disclaimer, so I don't get attacked in the streets or next time I go to Juma. These are just my understandings. They're constantly developing, growing as I learn things. Research the deen. People say be a Muslim, but if you're gonna be a Muslim, I need to understand who I am. And to be a Muslim means a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of stuff attached to it, and I'm trying to study and understand it. And there's certain things that I've studied and understood and come to the conclusion that I don't believe that. I don't follow that. I understand it. I understand where it came from. I don't believe it. I understand that there's a ton of other Muslims that are around me who might be in this mosque who believe this right now. I don't believe this. Does that mean I have to leave? Does it mean I can't pray with y'all? Does that mean this, that, and the third? I don't know. Maybe for you, maybe I gotta go to another mosque. Maybe I'm just keep quiet. But as of right now, I don't believe what the imam just said. Is everybody cool with that? Nope. You cool with it? Oh, you don't believe it either? Oh, okay, cool. Two of us. You kind of funky? Ma'am, you need to re-explain that. So these are just my points of view and thoughts. I'm not proselytizing for you to take anything I said with any credence. In some cases, it might reinforce your own points of view. I do try and be cognizant of how certain things that I can say can lead people down a crazy path or make people feel a certain way, because these are something that you were born and live with and eat, sleep, and will die by. It's not meant to be offensive towards you. I'm not saying anything that isn't factual. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm saying actually comes from other Muslims and scholars and doing research and just putting a general level of scientific analysis on things. And it does come across as being very valid. It's not. I'm just not just spouting like there's a sorcerer in the Kaaba. If you just go there and scratch it, there's a sorcerer that's gonna come out. Like if you rub the Kaaba 7 times, a genie's gonna come out the top. Like I'm not spouting stuff like that. I'm trying to give you some factual things based on actual evidence. Whether you choose to believe that stuff or not, it is what it is. It isn't going to change you. Hopefully it doesn't make you not Muslim. I'm not siding with any camp. I'm not trying to be pro-Christian or defend the weak or do whatever or create a schism for you. I'm just giving you, as you ask me a question, I'm going to answer thoroughly as possible. And that's that. I hope everybody's doing well, and be safe, type faith. Make sure you go out. When you do go out for essential services and goods and items only. Wear facial protection at all times. It covers the mouth and the face. The mouth and the nose. If you're not going to get a vaccine, don't get a vaccine. But please let me know that you ain't got one so I can just kind of move around. Please do me that. But, be safe. Anybody's out there that's feeling sick, I hope you're getting better. Anybody out there that actually is sick, I hope that you're doing well and getting better on a path to recovery, quick, soon, fast, in a hurry. Of all prayers, please. The power of prayer to you getting a little bit better. To people that have died and have faced loss in the time of Corona and COVID-19, I hope that you are, my condolences, and I hope that you're getting through this uncomfortable time. Stop protesting. It's dangerous. Makes people sick. Makes you sick. You can protest later. I get it. Please try and, if your state is opening and reopening, please just kind of keep it sticking to essential things and maintaining social distance, physical distance. Please don't just go to the movies because it's open. Like, it still is dangerous. The disease is still out there. The virus is still floating around. You still can catch it. It isn't scared of remdesivir. It isn't chilling because there's more people out. Like, it's actually waiting for more people to come out so it can infect and get more people sick. So do your research, gain a better understanding. Peace to the homies and the homettes. And we'll talk about, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I'll save it for another time. Those codes, those interesting ancient codes. And there was one super, super funny one that I found that was of interest. So remind me either tomorrow or the next time you see me. And to everybody that's fasting, Ramadan Mubarak. Hope you have a good fast and good prayers, and please keep me in your du'as. This young kufar from the west side who does not believe in the Zamzam. Please keep me in your du'as as well as my family. Stay off my little sister because I don't want to put the bats on you. So show some respect. And shout out to Lady Zayati. Shout to Sharjil Rauf. Shout to Ahmad Sakamini. Shout to Mr. Legacy Jones. Shout to Smokey the Ghost. Shout to Pistol Pixie, our resident team of experts here over at the Superfacts. And maybe next time I'll see you on the YouTubes. YouTube live with something important to say, not just rambling for 3.5 hours. So y'all be good, man. Peace and much love to you. Bam!